Hey there, Jerbears. I'm excited. Excited for what exactly? The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, of course. The sequel to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 1. I wrote the script for this, in case you couldn't tell. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 things I'd really like to see in Breath of the Wild 2 that would essentially make it a much better game than Breath of the Wild 1. Now, remember, this is going to be my opinion and my list, so it's pretty much going to be the only one that matters. Since most of the things in this list are things that I would just really like to see and they don't really have a lot of evidence going for or against them, I'm going to be talking about how likely I think they are to actually happen. Obviously, I want everything on this list to come into fruition in some way in Breath of the Wild 2, but even if it doesn't, that's completely fine. Nintendo will just be dead to me. Anyways, let's get to what you're actually here for and get to my list of the top 5 things I'd really like to see in Breath of the Wild 2. The very first thing I'd really like to see in Breath of the Wild 2 is something I know a lot of core gamers were expecting and hoping for with the first game, and when we found out it was ultimately absent, something we truly missed. Fishing. Now I know what you may be saying. Fishing? Who the hell asked for fishing? I can tell you who. Millions, even billions of gamers, probably. In all seriousness, the main reason I want fishing in Breath of the Wild 2 is because Breath of the Wild 1 felt like it was meant to have fishing. The game is action packed and you're constantly exploring and adventuring, yes, but for the rest of the time you have, you may as well just be taking in the views and enjoying the quiet and serene moments of the game. Fishing would have been a pretty nice incentive to get more players to experience those types of moments. I also don't like how in the first game, catching fish essentially boiled down to you jumping into the water and spamming A trying to grab them, or blowing them up, or electrocuting them. Hopefully, you get my point here. There should have been a fishing rod item of some sort in the game, something that obviously would have broken like everything else in the game, and alongside this, some crafty Lurelin villager who would have been more than happy to sell you more rods. I guess a reason as to why this couldn't have happened is that it probably would have needed a separate mechanic other than fishing. If you don't get my meaning, think of how a branch can be a torch and a hit stick, how a torch can be a torch and a hit stick, how those big leaves can be used on the little sailboats and to push enemies away. If I were Nintendo, I would have felt the need to implement the ability to hook enemies like in Minecraft and other physics based objects in the world. Game theory alert. Game theory alert. What if the reason we don't have a fishing mechanic in Breath of the Wild 1 is because it was a multi platform game between the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Wii U? Game game mystery game myth solved. I don't know how Matt Pat uh, does he solve what? You don't you don't see the correlation? Oh, okay. Well, obviously Nintendo would have needed HD Rumble for the fishing mechanic, and the Wii U uh, only has SD Rumble, and you wouldn't be able to tell if a fish was biting your bait. So there you go, everybody. Fishing was supposed to be in Breath of the Wild 1, confirmed by me, the game theorist. Alright, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, just maybe. But I'm hoping that Breath of the Wild 2 has fishing in some sort of way, some sort of fashion. I'd take a mini game, honestly. But the hope is for fishing rod and for full featured fishing mechanic with the HD rumble. That's it. As for how likely I think fishing is to actually show up in Breath of the Wild 2, I'm going to give it a 60%. A little bit more over than 50-50, mostly because I'm optimistic and I just really want to see it happen. While we're on the topic of features that core gamers definitely wanted and were expecting, farming. Whoa there, friend. Before you bombast me in the comments telling me how farming was the last straw, I'm not asking for Harvest Moon levels of farming here. I'm not asking for Link to all of a sudden need to water his crops daily and to tend to them. I'm just asking for a way to get passive resources. Resources that, yes, the player would think, hey, that'd be pretty nice to have, but wouldn't always want to go out and get. Things like Hyrule herbs, fortified pumpkins, and Endura carrots. Maybe even some of the more sought out items in the game, like the hardy truffles. And no, this wouldn't convince people to stop scavenging and hunting down these resources. If a player wants to sit around and wait the however many in-game days this farming would take, that's on them. The option to go out and get these items is still there. I just think it would be a nice way to get some specific resources at a consistent rate. In terms of likeliness this will show up, I'll give it a 50%. I feel as if there's plenty of land for a garden slash farm type area near Link's house, spoiler alert, and Nintendo could definitely just plop that down there. Next thing on the list, more customization options. Just more armor for Link, more armor for the horse. I said horse, by the way, like the one that you ride. Like the one that you mount. Horsey, like the one horsey, the one you feed apples to. That's the horse. That's the horse I want. That's the horse I meant. More armor for everyone. I'm a big fan of games that allow me to make any bit of my gameplay that much more personal to me, and I want to transform Link from the hero of time to the hero of drip. I know they'll likely have everything from the first game back in the second, bar Xenoblade Chronicle 2's crossover outfit. For that, they'll probably give Link Xenoblade Chronicle 3's main character's clothes, but maybe they could go even more in depth. Haircuts would be a pretty cool thing to have, and this is actually an idea I don't think would happen, but maybe customizable weapons? Just simple stuff like color changes to the sheath. The only reason I don't think this is likely is simply because of how the weapons in Breath of the Wild work. I don't want to customize a cool sword I found only to have Link break it like 10 minutes later. On that note, what if they had a system of repairing broken weapons? Like, sure, the weapon still breaks, it still takes up an equipment slot, but you could go to a blacksmith or something and get your weapon repaired with materials or with another weapon of the same type. Something to think about. So, just how likely do I think more customization options are going to show up? Well, 100%. I know there's going to be more armor in the game, and more weapons too. But on smaller detail stuff like haircuts, probably more of a 30%. I don't think Nintendo would want people messing with the main character's iconic look so much. Then again, they sort of did that for Breath of the Wild in the first place, didn't they? As we find ourselves at my penultimate and ultimate items on the list, let us remember one thing, Jerbears. A Jerbear can dream. Princess Zelda playable. Oh, what a completely original thought. And actually, you're wrong. Or, since you're being sarcastic, you're right. But also, if you're not being sarcastic, you're wrong. Because I'm putting this on this list because I knew a lot of other people were going to ask for it. And I want to acknowledge it because I'm a Jerbear of the people. I can hear you asking now, how could Nintendo even reason Zelda being the playable main character? Well, they could justify it by having Link be the one who falls into that pit of despair in the most recent trailer we got. Oh, what's that, silly little Jerbear? You have no idea what I'm talking about? Well, maybe you should watch the video I have on my channel breaking down the E3 2021 teaser trailer. It'll do your mind good. Anyways, I see the obvious problem with this, such as, oh, how would she be able to play and move around just like Link? And yeah, valid point. My theory for that's maybe she's the one that gets the gross arm thing, and from there past Sky Guy Link would have her play through his memories and she'd have to learn and stuff. I don't know, do I look like I have a single coherent thought in my head? And who's to say she hasn't learned a few things about combat through her time with Link? Or better yet, who's to say her combat and movement would even need to be anything like Link's? She could be a rune-heavy character like in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. But this is all just me theorizing. So, Zelda playable in Breath of the Wild 2? Likely? No, not at all. Will it happen? I'm pretty sure it won't. Will it happen in the future? I have hopes that it will. I think Princess Zelda will eventually shine in a mainline game, but until then, we're gonna have to wait. Or play Age of Calamity. And so the last thing I'd really like to see in Breath of the Wild 2, which I'm pretty sure is extremely likely and would actually be the biggest pro to Breath of the Wild 2, aside from, being a sequel to Breath of the Wild 1, is to have that sense of being in a new world all over again. Now, on the surface, this may seem like an extremely tall order, especially because I think most people are assuming they're using the same assets as in the first game. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they are, but I think if they weren't putting any new substantial things in there, we wouldn't have had to wait so long for this game. Or maybe we would. I don't know. Again, no coherent thoughts in my head. But I am just hoping and excited to get into Breath of the Wild and experience new things, new quests, new locations, new everything. And things that aren't so new either. Since this is the world of the first game, no doubt we'll have returning characters and storylines, and I'm pretty excited about that. So as for the chances of me exploring Hyrule again and finding new things, and fighting new enemies, exploring new locations, I'm going to give it a 100%. And you know what? Even if the game is exactly the same as Breath of the Wild 1, I honestly haven't played Breath of the Wild 1 in such a long time that I would probably find new things to do all over again. Well, Jerbears, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of the top 5 things I'd really like to see in Breath of the Wild 2. I hope they all come true, naturally, but even if they don't, I know Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be another fantastic game in the Legend of Zelda series. If you like this video, please hit that like, subscribe, and that bell notification. It helps out apparently. And please, let me know what y'all are hoping for in Breath of the Wild 2 and, how likely you think they are to happen, no matter how mundane or how crazy they might seem. I look forward to going down to the comments and reading what y'all have to say. Be seeing you, Jerbears. Bye-bye.